Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to share with you how to use metronome cycling to attain great speed and accuracy at the piano. And on this channel, hope to empower you with strategies, mindsets, frameworks, etc. to help you in your piano playing and hopefully other things as well. And here I'm not going to talk about technique, even though that's a very important component as well. I'm not going to talk about other aspects of my physical methodology. So you should just consider this to be one piece of the puzzle, but one that I think is really important. I think of it as the center of my physical methodology in a lot of ways, how I can play virtuosic etudes and maybe other difficult pieces that you've seen on the channel. So the first thing is to just make sure that you can play with honestly any metronome speed to quality. So here, even if you can play a piece and passably, let's say at like a medium speed. I mean, sometimes I choose a piece and I'm like, I could more or less manage this at a pretty fast speed. I'll start at less than half of the speed, even slower if necessary to preserve quality. It's just what speed is it that I can learn and memorize tiny little areas to a very high quality. And then through spaced repetition, I'll stay at that slow metronome speed, come back, and then do maybe like medium-sized areas at a very high quality from memory. And then I'll come back, and then I'll do large areas, and then very large areas through spaced repetition and expansion using strategy. Anyway, so then this is where the metronome cycling part comes in, at the point where I can do at a slow, conservative speed for me, this pretty much the entire piece, or at least very large sections of the piece. And I think I differ from other people in this regard. Let me know in the comments if you are one of the people that does this same thing I'm about to describe. For some people, they'll say like, oh, you shouldn't use the metronome as your main means of practice. That'll take away from your sense of pulse. I don't believe that really at all. There's a video called like, is the metronome good or evil, that I've created, where I express my views about the metronome really only being a tool as good as its user. And there are people that say like, oh, you should use the metronome only to like check the tempo of where you're at, or of course I don't believe that either. I believe it can be used for many different things. But I feel like what's pretty common also, even for those that believe using the metronome is a good idea, they'll use it up to a certain point and then they won't go down to the slower speeds again. So for instance, let's say that the goal speed for a piece, let's just say it's like 160, right? Arbitrary number. Maybe we start even at like 60 or something, right? Less than half of the speed. So if the person works all the way up to 160, like they do like the whole piece at 60, then they do it maybe at 80, 100, 120, 140, 160. Then they're like, all right, I've done it to 160, so that's it. I've already gotten up to the full speed. No metronome anymore. This is typically what I will do, and this is just one hypothetical scenario. I might start it at 60. Now remember, this is with a good quality. It's with, I call it my all loud weighty touch in quotation marks, as there's other parameters as well that I'll maybe go over another time. But in any case, so I do it at 60, then I'll do the whole piece again, let's say at 70, then 80, 90, 100, 110. Let's say that I'm topping out at 110 right now. I'll cycle back down to 60 again. So I'll go right back down to 60 and then start to work my way up again. 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. Maybe I can make 120 now, because the work that I did at the slower speeds, it's made me good enough that I can now push that tempo up a little bit. 120. Maybe now I can drop out 60 because I'm good enough now. I don't need to go all the way back down to 60. I can go down to 70. So 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. Maybe now I can go to 130. Maybe now I can drop out 70, right? So every time I'm going back down to the lowest speeds again, the slower speeds are helping the higher speeds, and then the higher speeds are in turn helping the slower speeds. So everything is helping each other. And this kind of like interleaved variable mixed practice is greatly supported by the general learning research outside of piano as well too. So over time, the lower speeds, they're likely being dropped out gradually, and also some of the intermediate speeds can be dropped out gradually as well too. So one possible progression from here Could be like, maybe I drop out 70, now I'm going 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140 maybe I can do. Now do like 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140. Maybe now I can finally inch up to 150. There's other strategies I use too, but for the sake of simplicity, let's say we just use the metronome cycling for this thought experiment. Then we go back down, let's say like 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. Maybe now finally I've made it to 160. And then at this point, as I cycle back down, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160. I don't know if I can walk here. Hopefully I can walk past this thing. I might drop out 90. I might start dropping out the intermediate speeds, right? 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160. And then maybe I start doing like 100, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160. 100, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, 100, 120, 140, 150, 160. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to turn back. 100, 120, 140, 160. And maybe those are the speeds that I'm left with in the end. Now, to cycle through all of those speeds, it might initially take quite a long time. Like, it could take like a week, it could take 2 weeks. It depends how much you practice, how serious you are, how high your standards are. But over time, it should normalize regardless of what level you are. So for me, it may normalize at like, 4 speeds. In the end, it might be like 100, 120, 140, 160. And that actually becomes my daily routine. So then every single day, using my like all out touch, that again, I might explain in another video, and preserving quality, using strategy, using other things I won't go over in this particular video, I'm going to play through all 4 speeds through the entire piece, right? So it's like, for that particular piece, I'll perform it first, cold performance first, just to assess things, and then I'll do my metronome practice, 100 through the whole piece, 120 through the whole piece, 140, and then 160. And when I am doing this metronome cycling, you might be wondering, like, why are you constantly going back down to the slow speeds when you can play so fast? Well, obviously there is no perfection, and we're always trying to increase the quality incrementally. Initially, during the ramping up stage, right, if you remember in the beginning, I couldn't play anywhere near 160. Really, like, the going back down to the lower speeds, that's what allows me partially to unlock the higher speeds. If I had just gone like 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, I'm having trouble with 120, let me just keep staying at 110. Ultimately, I don't think I would have unlocked 120. Rather, it's noticing, like, oh, I'm having trouble starting around 90 or so. Then 100, I'm having a little bit more trouble. 110, I'm having quite a bit of trouble. Taking into account, probably even literally marking all those little problem areas. And then when I go down to 60, really, really zeroing in, being very healthily skeptical that those areas are mastered. It's not enough that it sounds perfect. And then later on, it's not even enough that it feels perfect on the surface. I'm healthily skeptical and suspicious. I'm like, well, I'm having trouble with this starting at 90, and then at 100, and then at 110, I'm having way more trouble. So that must mean that there are hints of weakness somewhere, an area where my finger is relaxing like a split second too late, an area where there's a slight bit of unevenness or a slight bit of lack of confidence that I'm not initially detecting. And as I continue to go through this process, every single time that I relentlessly go back down to 60 again, or I go back down to 70 again, I am extremely vigilant at those slower speeds, because the slower speeds are the key to unlocking the higher speeds, and then to unlocking higher quality at those higher speeds. And as with most everything in piano playing and in life, it's a very iterative process, and it depends on how good your observations are at each of these speeds, how detailed your notes are, how carefully you adjust, and how well you run experiments, how well you draw conclusions. So that means, for instance, if you detect unevenness at 120 and then you go back down to like 70, for instance, how accurate are your observations? How good was your note taking? How good is the experiment you then, if you suspect your second finger is holding for a fraction of a second, at 120 and that's what's causing the unevenness, can you be especially attentive to that when you do 70, 80, 90, 100, etc. all over again? As that continues, you will begin to work out all the little issues that would begin to creep up as the speeds ascend, right? So every single time you go back down to the lower speeds, you're giving yourself a chance to correct things that might be impossible at the higher speeds. Like, you can wish all you want, but if you're staying, for instance, at 140 or 150, the number of times that you're recording a less than stellar quality, it's just too high. It's too high of a percentage. Whereas if you're going back down to 60, 70, 80, for instance, in the beginning, and then maybe later on you just cycle back down to 100, you are able to play a very high quality, a much higher percentage at the time, and that's something that your brain and body understand. So yeah, so that's the super high level view. Like I said, there's a lot more to it, as is typical with me. That's maybe part of the reason I'm pretty long-winded, as you guys may have gathered. But I hope that that's helpful, and that might surprise you to know that it is a daily routine. Like, that is how many times I end up cycling. Like, you think about every day going through those initially like a lot of speeds and then just 3 or 4 speeds every single day. And that's like the amount of reps that you put in, the amount of spaced reps that you put in over time. Now, I don't know at what point you're going to be watching this video, but there's many examples of metronome practice on this channel. And you might see that it says like slow metronome practice, slow medium metronome practice, medium metronome practice. So sometimes what I'm doing is I'm taking like a lot of different pieces and I'm doing like what is for me a slow metronome speed through a whole bunch of different pieces. And then I'm going to cycle through all of them again at a slightly faster speed. And then all of them again at a medium speed. And once I reach like what for me is the fast speed or top speed, then I will cycle back down to slow speeds again. And the videos I upload, they're just whatever I happen to be practicing on that given day. It doesn't mean that they'll all reach the top speed at the same time or anything. It's just my personal practice. But if you want to see examples of what I think is a good solid touch, you know, a good healthy all loud sound, you can check out those videos pretty much just by searching like piano practice, David Chang. Like, there's, even right now, there's a lot of videos. Anyway, hope you found this helpful. Let me know what questions, comments you have. What are you curious about? And I haven't been the greatest about responding to comments sometimes, just because I'm trying to prioritize my actual students. But I'll try to be better. So yeah, please like, subscribe, let people know about the channel if you found this helpful, and looking forward to the next one.